This is CNN Breaking News.
We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. This is New Day. It's Wednesday, August 30th. It's 5 a.m. here in Houston, where I am. Tropical Storm Harvey making landfall again, this time in Louisiana, where it is hammering the area with heavy rain. Here in Houston, where I'm standing, after 5 straight days of rain, I am happy to report this morning the conditions do seem to be improving. The streets that we drove in to get to Houston, they were wet, but they were not flooded. Now, the situation here in the convention center, though, is pretty dire. I am at the city's largest shelter, where at last count, I just checked 5 minutes ago, 8,319 people are seeking refuge. There are 2 more mega shelters that are now open in this city. They're taking people in to alleviate the overcapacity conditions here. 1/3 of Harris County, which includes 4.5 million people in Houston and its suburbs, is now underwater. And all eyes are on the 2 dams that are trying to contain this record-breaking rainfall in this area. The death toll, we want to give you an update on that. It is, of course, sadly on the rise. Among those people killed, a veteran Houston police sergeant, Steve Perez. He drowned trying to get to his command post to help those in need. And rescue crews and volunteers are, of course, working around the clock, as you've heard. They have saved thousands and thousands of people from the floodwaters. I mean, here are just a few examples on your screen. There are thousands of these examples, Chris. So we have all sorts of survivor stories to bring you this morning, as well as updates on how Houston is going to try to deal with this today.
You have so many people down there in this concerned citizens corps going around saving their fellow community members. It'll be very helpful to people to see what the reality is down there. The big question is, what will this rain mean as Harvey returns? Okay, hopefully Texas will be spared any further damage, except for this one part of East Texas that we'll be watching this morning. But what about Louisiana? There's already about 2 feet of rain in just the last 24 hours. So there is a flood threat to several states in its path. All of this as President Trump is back in Washington after meeting with emergency responders in Texas. The president is getting some criticism for how he was on the ground, and was his focus on himself or the people who are suffering. We'll take you through the politics of it. But he also has a new agenda item for you to entertain this morning: tax reform. The president says he's going to go ahead and make his pitch to the country as we are watching this natural disaster unfold. So we're covering everything for you. Let's begin with CNN's Polo Sandoval in one of the areas that we're watching right now in Texas. What do we know, Polo? What is the status where you are?
Chris, the Brazos River continues to rise. A short drive just outside of Houston, west of the city center. Meanwhile, there in Houston, that curfew has been lifted as the remnants of Harvey, at least Tropical Storm Harvey, makes that second landfall near the Texas-Louisiana border. There are many people here right now still coming to grips with what's happening here. So search and rescue operations continue. Obviously, that death toll continues on the rise in and around the Houston area, and that includes Sergeant Steve Perez, that veteran of the Houston Police Department. This morning we're learning that his wife begged him not to go to work this past weekend as the storm was closing in on the region. We are also learning that he eventually did go missing under an overpass. Officials recovering the sergeant's body just yesterday. He is somebody who is described as having a passion for giving back to his community, and sadly that Sunday morning it would be the last day that he would do that. The reality is that death toll will likely increase, particularly as officials try to find answers for the Saldivar family back in Houston. CNN speaking to a loved one of the family of 6 that is still missing at this hour. They say there is very little hope that they'll find their loved ones alive.
The current just lifted up the van and started pointing it towards, into the water. It just took the van, and he had his window down, so he managed to get out the window, and then he tried to get around the van, but he couldn't. It was too strong. The current was too strong.
He can hear the kids screaming and crying, trying to get out of the van, and he kept telling them, go to the back of the van and, open the back doors, but from what he's describing, I'm sure the kids couldn't even grab a grip onto the van just to even reach the back door, much less open it. And he said it just went under the water.
And in order to try to prevent another tragedy like that, officials here in Fort Bend County have implemented a mandatory evacuation, Allison, including this riverside community along the Brazos. This water level you see behind me, Allison, is expected to go up at least another 5 feet in the next few days.
Okay, Polo, thank you for keeping track of that. Really scary stuff. We'll check back with you. So Harvey, as we say, is making landfall again, this time as a tropical storm. The storm dumping very heavy rain in eastern Texas and the western parishes of Louisiana. That's where we find CNN's Kaylee Hartung. She's in Lake Charles, Louisiana, with more. Kaylee, what are you seeing?
Well, Allison, knowing that Harvey made landfall less than an hour from here in Lake Charles, I would think I would be standing here in the rain talking with you this morning, but that's not the case. Wind, the bigger problem in Lake Charles this morning. Officials telling me they expect 40 to 50 mile an hour sustained winds throughout this day. That means they're anticipating power outages and tree damage, especially when the roots of the trees here are already so soaked from the rainfall we've seen this week and a very wet summer. I spoke earlier with the Director of Emergency Preparedness for Calcasieu Parish. He told me there were no calls for rescue overnight. It didn't rain as much overnight as anybody expected either. But yesterday and the night before, more than 500 rescues in Calcasieu and the neighboring Cameron Parish. And yesterday, on the 12th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, I spoke with Governor John Bell Edwards, and he told me that unfortunately people in Louisiana all too familiar with disasters. Despite the unknowns we still have today, Chris, he says he feels he has the people trained, experienced, and prepared for whatever today may bring.
All right, Kaylee, thank you very much. Keep us apprised of the situation there. So the big X factor is how much rain, how much wind, and where. And the specific concern in and around Houston are going to be those dams built in 1940. Is their age going to be determinative of their strength? CNN meteorologist Chad Myers has the latest. What do you see in terms of the path, and what are these infrastructure variables?
Well, the infrastructure is at its capacity because now it's actually flowing around the dam itself, and I'll get to that in a second. There's Cameron Parish right there where that center of circulation came on shore just a couple of hours ago. And there goes Harvey. Finally moving. The rain is moving away from Houston, but it's still into Beaumont, Port Arthur. And man, has it rained overnight there. A foot at least, some spots 18 inches. So I suspect we should focus a little bit on that Beaumont, Port Arthur area for the rest of the day because you're still going to see another 6 to 10. But look at these numbers here from Cedar Bayou, a new record at 51.88. You know, 4 days ago I walked on this platform right here and I said, there's a potential for 50 inches of rain. Look what this computer model is saying. And we couldn't believe it. It was confounding. You couldn't put your mind around it. So that has to be wrong. Well, it was right. And we said if the computers are right, this is going to be a catastrophic flood. And the computers were right this time. So here we go. This is the model you talked about. This right here. These are the dams we're talking about. This right here, Addicts, the big A. This right here, Barkers right here, doing very well. They are in great shape right now. They are not breaching. I've seen all kinds of tweets about all this. They are not breaching. What's happening is that out of Addicts, water's going into the bayou, Buffalo Bayou, and to Houston. That's normal. That's what they expect. They're letting that water out on purpose. What is wrong, if that's the right word, is that the end of this right here is the end of the water, and the water is spilling around the top of the dam at 108 feet above sea level. Gets above 108, it's going to spill. It was planned to do that. Now, that's not good for the neighborhoods here, because those people there are flooding now that weren't flooding before. But we do know, certainly, that the flooding has happened all the way through these neighborhoods behind Addicts and Barker, and there are now at least 3,500 homes flooded because the water couldn't get out of those dams fast enough. Allison.
Okay, Chad, thank you very much. We'll check back in with you throughout the program. So our